tuned into Embodied Astrology. My name is Renee Sills. I offer season ahead horoscopes and readings for the collective here at Embodied Astrology. And hence the name Embodied Astrology. I'm going to offer you an interpretation of astrology that moves through a somatic lens. Somatic is a word that refers to the body and of the body. So as we tune in with Libra season, we're going to tune in through our bodies. And as we journey through the map of Libra season, we will consider how this astrology might be resonating in our bodies, our body minds, our body, mind, hearts, souls, and spirits, and here on planet Earth. As always, take what works and leave the rest. Not everything is for everyone. Make the meaning that's meaningful for you. Remember that I too am a person, that my capacity for language is always limited. Given the limitations of our time, what I'm offering today is what is emergent right now. It's a tiny slice of what is potential inside of Libra season. And I hope that anything that comes through in this reading is helpful for you and serves your greatest well-being and the well-being of all of those in that you are in relationship with. All right, so I want to begin today in the body with a little bit of somatic practice, and we'll tune in with the Libra domains of the body. You might be familiar with Libra in its association with balance, and balance, of course, is a process. It is a dance. It is a constantly moving, shifting, fluctuating state, and one of the conundrums that we encounter when we're working with Libra energy in the world and in our own charts is the desire that I think probably all of us have to some extent to hold on to states of balance. And when we grasp onto states of balance, our bodies tend to become rigid, or our body minds tend to become rigid. If things feel balanced, oftentimes they feel easy enough, pleasant enough. They don't veer off into any particular extreme. And that can also be somewhat boring sometimes for some of us. So working with balance is also working with our own preferences, our attractions, our aversions, our ideas about what constitutes pleasure or interest or experience. So wherever you are right now, just tune in with your own balance. And as you tune in with your own balance, you might also be tuning in with your own imbalance or imbalances. As I tune in with my own body, I can feel that there are habits and patterns alive and well in my body that have been in development my whole life, and actually for generations through my ancestors. These habits and patterns run through my bones and my body weight, and they create a circumstance for me where certain parts of my body tend to bear weight in an unbalanced way, and other parts of my body may not be so enlivened, or I might not be so conscious of the life that's there. So I want to invite you to, with me, maybe even close your eyes if that feels comfortable, and let your internal awareness open up. And as your internal awareness opens, sense into your own body. Notice how weight is traveling through your left side and right side, your front side and back side, the parts of you that are more earthwards, the parts of you that are more spacious. And just noticing usually does something. So we don't even need to do anything to our bodies. We don't have to enforce adjustments. Just noticing will often intuitively inspire our bodies to fortify, bring more consciousness, to ease or relax, or simply get curious and inquire. The ways that we shift and change and seek to balance once we've perceived imbalance can also be habitual. So if you felt some kind of imbalance in your body and then immediately fixed it or did a kind of thing to adjust, I also want to invite you to relax that and notice what your body's habit is, or what the immediate assumption might be in an embodied kind of way about what to do when you perceive imbalance. And if you can just be present in the sensation of whatever you're experiencing, you might find that your body-mind, and notice I'm saying body-mind as one word, they're not separate, the body and the mind are part of the same whole. And when we tune the mind towards the body, the intelligence of the body can take the lead. And so as you attune with your body-mind towards sensations or experiences of balance and imbalance, if you ask your automatic mind, the patterned mind, to just step back a little bit, you might find that what happens naturally is a kind of swaying or circling around, or there might be a more fluid process of sinking into something. And that's the intelligence of your body, sensing into what is here and now, becoming present. That's the intelligence of your body-mind experiencing its own balance, which is a fluctuation, it's a dance. And as you just continue to explore balance or imbalance, notice your breath. Our breathing, of course, is one way that we can really easily connect with the key word of Libra, balance. The inhale and the exhale are continuous throughout our lives, and they bring us into states of expansion and contraction. And these states mirror the basic formula of life. Living, dying, waking, sleeping, going out, coming in, being out in the world, coming back home, are internal and external. So as you breathe, you might just greet life. You are breathing in a unison or chorus with all life on earth. And as we enter into our Libra season reading and time, if you feel so inspired, you might allow your breath to settle in with an intention for whatever season it happens to be, wherever you might be listening to this in time or space, and towards some of the themes that Libra presents to us regardless of our sun signs, moon signs, rising signs. We all have Libra in our charts. So I want to invite all of us to just set an intention, and this intention might serve a greater state of awareness of balance and imbalance in our lives, whatever that might mean to you right now in time and place, on a personal, collective, spiritual, or otherwise level. Thanks for joining me for that. As you're ready, you can open your eyes if they've been closed. I don't know how you like to engage with media, if you're listening on a podcast to me or watching on a video. I always really appreciate when we can be kind of relaxed with technology. So if you happen to be listening or watching somewhere where you can move around and kind of be in your body with this reading, that would be great. So as we get into the reading, I want to offer some divination that came through this morning. And by the way, I'm recording for you on the first day of Libra season. It's September 22nd. Happy equinox. I started the recording at about 8:30 in the morning Pacific time. I'm here on the stolen lands of many indigenous nations, beings, plant beings, rivers, mountains, on the Pacific Northwest corner of Turtle Island. And when I started to prepare for today's reading, I drew 2 cards and I wanted to share them. So the first card I chose from the Rosebud Tarot. This is a deck that was made in part with a wonderful astrologer, Diana Rose Harper. And I chose the deck today for roses, a symbol for sure of Libra energy, with their beauty and softness in the petals, and then also their sharp spikes, definitely representative of Libra's guiding planetary energy, Venus, who is the goddess of both love and war. And fitting enough, the card that came out after shuffling 7 times, 7 for Libra, the card that came out was the Lovers, but reversed. So I'm showing it upright first, and you can see, or I'll describe it, that there are roses, so big bouquets of red roses on the bottom, and there are 2 people standing in these roses. They are white presenting, male presenting, Victorian looking people. They look like a pair of dandies to me. They look like maybe a gay couple or a pair of good friends. And they are standing underneath, I don't know the word for the thing they're standing underneath. It's kind of like a terrarium or something on top of them with 2 pairs on either sides. But this card came out reversed. So here you can see the symbol of it, and their top hats are pointing down into this thing that they're standing underneath, and then the roses are on top. So my interpretation of this card coming into the reading has to do with the South Node in Libra. As we'll get into in a couple of moments, we are in eclipse season as Libra season commences, and we're in between 2 sets of eclipse, or 2 cycles of eclipses. There was an eclipse on September 17th that was a lunar eclipse, a full moon eclipse in Pisces. This was during Virgo season, so it was the Pisces full moon. And then on October 2nd, we'll have a new moon and solar eclipse in Libra. And eclipses, as you might know, are visual phenomena that we get to experience here on Earth. They're beyond visual phenomena. In fact, they are magnetic phenomena that affect us very deeply on a somatic level. And in the alignment that happens at eclipses, they're basically supercharged full moons and new moons, because the Earth, the moon, and the sun all get into an exact alignment, so that the body of one light gets obscured, either the sun or the moon. So we're in between a lunar eclipse, which is when the shadow of the Earth passes in front of the sun during the opposition of the full moon, and a solar eclipse, which is when the moon passes in front of the sun, or the body of the moon passes in front of the sun at a new moon. And how the alignment of the moon is oriented around the Earth in its own orbit is how the alignment is oriented around the Earth is defined by what are called the nodes, the North and the South Node. And these are the orbital points of the moon, the ascending and the descending points of the moon. These points are very important in astrology. In Vedic astrology, the South and the North Node, also called Ketu and Rahu, are considered just as important as planets. In Western astrology, there's been a kind of dilution of the importance of the nodal axis for some streams of astrology, but eclipses are a very powerful phenomena. And because the astrological language is symbolic, and we are working with the way that things appear here, and we're reading into the symbols, which is different than the science sometimes, although science itself is also a symbol and presents many symbols. The symbol of an eclipse, the obscuration or the shadowing of one of our primary lights and our luminaries, is really impacting. And if you have ever seen an eclipse, you might have felt that impact. During the time of a solar eclipse, everything goes dark. And it's like all of a sudden in the middle of the day, it's night. The night creatures start to come out, and the day creatures think that it's time for bed. During the lunar eclipse, with the shadow of the Earth moving over the face of the moon, sometimes the moon will turn a dark ochre color. And the feeling that comes over the body, in my experience at least, is a really kind of profound reorientation with balance. And so in the orbital pattern of the moon around the Earth, the ascending point is called the North Node and the descending point is called the South Node. And currently the South Node is in the part of the sky that we call tropical Libra in Western astrology. And the South Node is a releasing point. It is finishing up of something. Or I should say that ideally there is a kind of clearing out quality with the South Node. It's a point of letting go and also a point of learning. And so when we let go of something, ideally it is because we recognize that we can give it back to the earth. We can offer it back to creation. We no longer have to continue with particular cycles. And so eclipses are periods of time that often bring consciousness of cycles that are ready to give way to something that's new. And when we're working with the South Node, we are working with the readiness to release. And in the readiness to release, we are being reminded of what this readiness entails. So there may be feelings of too muchness or saturation or crises even that bring our attention into the pattern that is being prepared to let go. So with the lovers reversed, there is a delineation often with tarot that there's a relationship that's ready to be let go, or a relationship that's not working out, or an agreement that is misaligned for some kind of reason. And there's also the possibility that the relationship itself is situated on faulty premises. So ideally, with Libra, we are working with another really important keyword for this energy and sign, which is love. And inside of relationship, we have, of course, coming together of various elements. And inside of that coming together, hopefully we have equanimity and reciprocity and respect and dignity. And there is an agreement from all parties coming together to be in the relationship. And in the agreement, there is a consciousness of what it might take to really be in service to the relationship. So just like balance, right? Our relationships are wonderful reflections or mirrors of our states of balance and imbalance. And other people can show us our states of imbalance probably better than anyone else or anything else. And when the lovers gets reversed, we might consider where relationships have been founded upon states of intrinsic imbalance. So there is some kind of dynamic in the power structure or in the contract of the relationship or agreement that is not serving the greatest good. And even if one party in the relationship, let's say, gets a lot of pleasure and another party gets a lot of pain, even for the one who's getting a lot of pleasure, the relationship is not serving the greatest good, because the pleasure in this case will be the pleasure of objectification and extraction. It will be the pleasure of taking without giving back, or the pleasure of a kind of laziness, you know. Clarissa Pinkola Estes had a quote in one of the tarot books that I was reading about the lovers this morning. And I'm going to paraphrase her quote a little bit, but it was, "To love pleasure takes little, right? It's not hard to love pleasure. It's pretty easy to feel good about what feels good. But to love truly takes a hero who can manage their own fear. To love truly takes a heroic quality to manage our own fear. And you can probably hear in this statement the contrast or polarity between Libra and Libra's opposite sign, Aries. And the North Node is currently in Aries. So if the South Node is a place where we're going to let go of, then the North Node is a place that we're going to move towards and evolve in that direction. And Aries as an archetype is an individuated one. So we in our body minds get to experience the phenomena of individuation in that we are alive in our own bodies for a very small amount of time that we call a lifetime. And inside of these bodies, we're subjective. So we are the center of our own stories. We have experiences that are unique to us, even though we are definitely part of the ever-present continuous phenomena that creates all life on Earth. And if we take a really big view of what's here, of course, everything is everything, and there's not separation. But the dream of life, whatever it's for, jury's still out. I don't know, maybe we'll find out at some point. But the dream of life asks us to awaken inside of our individuated experience and actually awaken to love, right? And to the courage and the bravery that is required in order to experience union and connection and interrelationship. Because it's in that stuff, the connection and the interrelationship, where we actually find our own liberation and freedom. And so the polarity between Aries and Libra is a polarity like any other that might be represented by symbols such as the yin-yang symbol, where you have two opposites, right? The color white and the color black, two visual opposites, spiraling into one another. And at their thickest parts, in the belly of their representations, is a tiny little dot of the other. So in the thickest part of the black polarity is a tiny little dot of white, and in the thickest part of the white polarity is a tiny little dot of black. And what this symbol tells us is that inside of all opposition, at the heart of all opposition, contains the seed of the other part. And here on planet Earth, in our opportunities to experience individuation, we have lots of opportunities to experience polarity and otherness and opposition. And it seems that the human experience is very obsessed with this, right? There are all types of people who like to group into feelings of us or them or we or me versus you. And those experiences are real in a lot of ways. We do encounter difference, and sometimes our differences are vast and extreme. Sometimes they have heavy impact inside of them when they are really intense with attraction and aversion for what is perceived as the other. There can be a lot of impact and potentially harmful impact that comes through. But as long as we in our lives are obsessed with othering, we'll continue to experience separation. And many scholars and wise people talk a lot about the age that we're currently in, kind of this age of modernity, as being one of a delusional mindset of individualism and separation of our consciousness from the everything that we're a part of. So if we're thinking about like Descartes, this kind of Cartesian like split, right, between the mind and the body, or between the human and the nature, or between the masculine and the feminine, um, we have basically a great setup for suffering. We are a part of what we are a part of. And being apart from what we are a part of does not give us access to our inherent resourcefulness. And it kind of leaves us in a place of ignorance and stupidity, really, because we can't come into the wisdom of the interconnected all, which is definitely where our intuitions are most strong and our discernment is most sensitive and caring. And so many of us in our lives will seek freedom. We'll seek a kind of feeling of liberation. And inside of our seeking of freedom and liberation, there might be other kinds of ideas like personal happiness or a sense of security or safety or stability, right? Oh, if I can do this for me, then I'm going to have everything I need to not experience suffering or something like that, which of course is false if we even take a couple of seconds to reflect on that. But it's also very much a habit or a pattern that can be reflexive societally, collectively, personally, interpersonally, etc. So the wisdom of the polarity of Libra and Aries teaches us that liberation and individuation and true feelings of freedom happen only when we come into intimacy with what is, which is a constantly fluctuating relationships with various actors, right? Which we might even consider to be parts of ourselves, whether they are other people, whether they are beings in the more than human realms, whether they are the multitudes and the many voices and personalities or aspects of being that move through our own bodies. Coming into awakened awareness of relationship then awakens us to the power of our own choice, which is liberation. That's the state we're trying to get to. A state of freedom where we have absolutely no responsibility to anything at all, and we can do exactly what we want at any given point. Simply does not exist. But we do have choice in our lives, regardless of our circumstances. We can choose how to be in relationship to them. And in the ways that we choose how to be in relationship, we can choose to be liberated, which in this context we might even take as a synonym for mature. We can take responsibility for our own choices, or we can choose to be totally entrapped and habituated and reactive and not responsible for our own choices, but basically giving that power away to others, to the circumstance, to the system, to society, and whatever. And of course, our lives are very much shaped by circumstances that are totally outside of our control. But if we tell ourselves that story over and over and over, that we don't have any control, then we will never awaken inside of our capacity for individual choice. The last guest episode that Embodied Astrology put out was a conversation between our amazing guide, Sherry Taylor, who has been teaching for 2 years now on Saturn in Pisces, its current transit. I should say Saturn is exalted in Libra. And Sherry talked with Ari Felix, another really amazing astrologer and guide, and this topic of agency and choice and liberation, waking up to our own power, was very much a theme of their conversation. So I'm going to leave that there. We'll probably come back to the theme of the Lovers Reversed as we get into the astrology, and then I'll offer one more divination and card. This one coming through the Dirt Gems, the Plant Oracle guide that I've used a lot in these readings. I really love this guide. It's such a beautiful deck, really, really beautiful writing and illustrations. And so at the beginning of my preparation today, I asked the Dirt Gems to let me know what healing medicine might want to come in to support us in our body minds throughout Libra season. And the card that came through was seaweed. So I'm just going to read the description for seaweed because I think it says everything that it needs to be said, probably much better than I could say it on my own. So seaweed, here also named the salty cave. Seaweed is the ocean myth incarnate. Seaweed is the nourishing, fecund, salty lifeblood in the lungs of the world. Seaweed is a rain predictor, legend maker, harborer of mythical creatures, and home to diverse and essential ecology across the world. There has not been a time in human existence that we have not feared and venerated the ocean and their inhabitants. Seaweed is the food on your plate, the monster under your boat, and queen of the salty caves. Seaweed is mystery, wonder, and substance. We find seaweed in every ocean in the world, and they embody a vast range of characteristics and relationships. Seaweed offers their potent medicine to a variety of human ailments. We're always mirroring this tremendous embodiment of energy, perhaps for the most simple and fundamental reason. The sea is where we come from and what we are made of. If you're looking to connect with your deepest origins, with the cellular primal state of where you have emerged from, look to the ocean and connect with seaweed. If your body is asking you for the salty, thick, viscous nourishment of seaweed, heed this request. We as people easily forget what we are made of, what we are connected to, where we have come from. We look for all the ways that we are different rather than the ways we are eternally bound to one another and to our origins, magic woven through our very being. Seaweed can remind us of these timeless networks of life and guide us to find our place and our past in these tidal waters. So seaweed is coming in as medicine for states of relationship that are imbalanced. And if you, like me, like probably a lot of people right now, have been experiencing life in a way that is increasing a sense of polarity, where there's a feeling of, oh, those people, or that kind of person, or this part of me, right? That's kind of like agitating, frustrating, where the instinct to other feels really strong. Or if you're experiencing relationships in certain ways that feel confining, these could be relationships to other people, relationships to aspects inside of yourself, even to people who might live inside of you who like aren't even here at all. Or relationships to institutions, to structures, to big collective identities. If you've been experiencing your own relationship to relationships, feeling frustrating, confining, violent, seaweed might be helpful right now to come back into relationship with the everything and with the inherent health of what is here. Some of the bodywork training that I have had invites us to always come back to resource consistently to the health that is already here. And in this practice, sometimes we have to go all the way back to our stem cells, right? To the parts of our beings that at one point were omnipotent. That means that we could grow in any direction. Our potentialities were unlimited. And stem cells, of course, are vital and vibrant. They're full of life. They're full of potentiality. Here on Earth, this nature that we are a part of, there is so much vitality. And the vitality comes through the diversity of the everything that is here. The intelligence of the natural world is the intelligence of the creative spirit. And again, the delusion of separation that comes up in our arguments and our conflicts and our judgments and in the deep, ancient, twisted karma that moves through groups of people and body minds, perpetuating violent states, perpetuating harm, self-harm, harm to others, harm to earth, harm to the living beings that we share the earth with. That is a delusional state, and it will continue to resonate and ricochet for as long as we misremember or don't remember our inherent connectivity. And that word remembering in and of itself is a call to bring back together, to come back together in our various parts. All right, so I'll leave that there for the non-astrology divination. And I'm going to offer one more somatic tool or toy that you might want to play with as you listen or watch this reading. And that is contact with your kidneys. And I'm going to bring my hands to my kidneys right now. And you can take your hands to your back body and find the place where your lower ribs move in towards your spine. And just hold that place, or if it feels good, you might rub that place. You can rub the muscles along your spine, or you can simply hold that space. In medical astrology, Libra rules the kidneys, and the kidneys, of course, are really important for us to cleanse and clarify the waters that move through our body. So similar in some ways to the role of seaweed, kidneys help clean our fluid systems and our water systems. They also help us to keep a good salt balance, and this has a lot to do with our capacity for energy and vitality. And on top of our kidneys rest our adrenal glands, and inside of your adrenal glands, hormones are produced, adrenaline being one of those hormones. But hormones are produced that help your body also metabolize sugar and work well with its own energetic metabolism and energy cycling or consumption. And of course also move into action or rest and become more relational or responsive. So holding our kidneys can help us come into states of balance when we are feeling either overstimulated or depleted. And as you hold your kidneys or you rub your kidneys, I want to invite you to breathe into them. And it's fine if you even let your spine round a little bit so that your back body can puff up. And as you breathe, try and spread your back body open. Let your breath actually spread your skin that's underneath your hands. And as you exhale, you could make a sound, and you might gently sigh or hum or tone, or you could even make a shh, like a shushing sound, or a s, like a snake sound. Take one or two more breaths like this, and as you inhale, let your breath fill your back body, and you might imagine your back body filling with light. And then as you exhale and sound out, you might imagine that your body is releasing what it doesn't need back to the earth. Just like your kidneys help your fluid body release what it doesn't need back to the earth, this breath can help your energy body release what it doesn't need back to the earth. And notice how it makes you feel to breathe like this. For me, just a couple rounds of breath will immediately help pacify and soothe my mind and my consciousness. It will help me access a state of greater ease. And if I'm feeling depleted, I also find that this breath is nourishing. It's not necessarily like hyper energizing, but it is nourishing in a really deep way. As we go through the astrology and as you move through your Libra season experience, I hope that you will take time to tune in with your own embodied sense of balance, with your kidneys and with your breath. And if you enjoy that kind of practice or that orientation to astrology that moves through your actual somatic presence and little practices or tips and tricks like that, I hope that you'll join me this season. Every Monday from 8 to 9:30, I have a drop-in class on Zoom called Somatic Space. And in Somatic Space, we work with the astrology of the week ahead, and that astrology becomes a somatic score. So I'll usually guide us through some kind of gentle body practice, similar to this kind of self-touch or self-massage, movements that are meant to be healing movements, offering adaptations for different bodies and needs. We'll do meditation, breath work, visualization, And these practices ideally help prepare us for the week ahead and for what's coming up. I always feel supported and prepared better by doing these practices, and this class has been going on for a little over a year and a half now, and I can say without a doubt that it has changed my life to be doing these practices and connecting with astrology weekly in these ways. So I hope that if that sounds compelling to you, you'll consider joining. You can join by drop-in or you can get a membership. And if you become a member, you'll also get access to Tea Time, which is a monthly conversation space where we kind of follow up with some of the themes that might come through in the collective reading or the horoscopes. And otherwise, folks are invited to tune in with astrology. We do chart work together. Typically, we have really profound conversations, and what comes through is something that's necessary to come through for the folks that are there. And then if you become a member, you'll also get access to our study groups. And we have study groups at Embodied Astrology for folks who are wanting to practice chart reading. And our chart reading study group is led by Alicia Mauji, our community coordinator, and someone who's very important and very dear to the Embodied Astrology community. And also my teaching assistant and a lovely, really wise, intelligent human. So all of that with an EA membership or drop in on Mondays. If you can't make the live time, you can always get the recording. All right, let's get into the astrology. I'm going to share my screen. So I have a chart up right now for the moment that I began today's reading. And I chose the time to begin the reading because today is the first day of Libra season. So the solar ingress, the light of Libra began to emanate just a couple of hours ago. Also, Libra was rising when I decided to begin. So right at the beginning of the day, we had the first light of Libra spreading across the lands where I am. The moon is also in Gemini today, so we have a complementary air for air energy. And in just a little while, later this afternoon, Libra's planetary ruler Venus will make a exact square to Pluto, and then Venus will move out of Libra, where Venus has been for the last couple of weeks, and into the sign Scorpio. And in modern astrology, Scorpio is considered the domain of Pluto as well as the domain of Mars. They are housemates in Scorpio. And Pluto is currently transiting the very last degree of the sign Capricorn. It retrograded back into Capricorn. When was that? Right at the beginning of September. And it will only be here for another couple of weeks. Pluto is stationing direct in Libra season on October 11th and will move out of Capricorn in November. And as it moves out of Capricorn and into Aquarius, it is re-entering a sign where it has made a couple entries now at this point. This is the third and final time it will enter Aquarius. But once it enters November 19th, it will be there for about 20 years. So this is a really significant moment and signature inside of Libra season. And part of the reason why I decided to wait, sometimes I record before season begins, but I really wanted to wait until Libra season started so I could tune in with what's happening kind of energetically for me today. So I'm going to offer a reading of this chart of the moment that I'm beginning with, and then I will shift over to a drawing that I've been making over the last couple of weeks to help represent and visualize the flow of this season's astrology. So as we tune in with this chart, this is an offering for the collective, and take what works, leave the rest, make the meaning that's meaningful for you. If you're interested in a more personal read, definitely tune in with your horoscopes for Libra season. In those readings, I focus solely on what I feel coming through for a body, for an individuated body, for the 12 signs. So you can listen for your sun, moon, rising, or any other placements. And in this reading, I'm going to try my best to really tune in through my body to the body of Earth right now. So here we are in Libra season. It is the equinox. The equinox is a time of year that happens every single year consistently without fail. The Earth in its orbit around the sun is a steady body. There is stability in Earth's cycles, in its own movement, in its own evolution. Earth is a body. Earth is a living being. It is about halfway through its life cycle. Scientists say it's about 5 billion years old. And in its own evolutionary creative path, Earth has orbited the sun many, many times. And this orbiting, the centering or the circling, brings Earth into different relationships with light. And as light shifts across the face or the body of the Earth, seasons come and go. Where I am in the Northern Hemisphere, Libra is a gateway season from the months of light and warmth and heat into the months of dark and cold and condensing or retracting energy. So we are at the beginning of the autumn season here in the Northern Hemisphere. It's the beginning of the spring season in the Southern Hemisphere. And if you, like me, are at a place where light shifts between summer and winter, then at the equinox, what we have, the word equinox means equal night. So we have equal light. The day and the night are the same amount. Last night I watched the sunset. I really kind of took in the shadows. This morning I watched the sunrise to just be with the equinox and the changing light. And I want to invite you now where you are just to notice, what's the light like? What time is it? What time of year is it? And how does Libra season speak through the land where you are? What is blooming? What is dying? What are the animals doing? Throughout Virgo season where I am, the squirrels go nuts. They literally, they go nuts. They're planting nuts in the ground. You can see them scurrying around. They're so busy. They're so intent on, burying their cachet for the winter. The spiders are starting to get big. By Scorpio season, they're going to be enormous. So what is happening? Right? What are the qualities that nature is providing as a read into the astrology right now? One thing that I just love about Libra season and Taurus season, both Libra and Taurus are Venus ruled signs, is that the light becomes really pink where I am. I've just really noticed that, like, the light is so pink in these seasons, especially around sunrise and sunset. So in this moment of turning, this moment that happens every single year around the same time, this moment of the equinox, there is a palpable shifting of seasonal attitude. Now, in our own lives, this symbolically would be reflected in a shifting of our seasons and in a sensation of something turning, something preparing to experience itself in a new way. Libra is ruled by the planet Venus. In this chart, we can see that Venus is at the critical degree or the anaretic degree of Libra. It is just about to leave its home sign. And as it leaves Libra, it moves into the sign Scorpio. Now, Libra in many ways is the representation of a descent, of a place in the sky, the place of sunset, where we move from what is visible to what is invisible, but we haven't quite got there yet. So Libra's energy can resonate in some ways with concepts and ideas of what something is, particularly who we are as personas or who other people are as personas that we're interacting with. Libra and its opposite sign Aries definitely have symbolic information to give us about our egos and ego construction as we become who we are in many ways based on reflections of who we are from other people in our lives. our parents, our family, society, friends, lovers, partners, authority figures, etc., give us all kinds of information about what they see in us, what they like in us, what they don't like in us, who we quote unquote should be in order to receive the things that we need to be, etc. Now, as we move into Scorpio, we move into the water element. Libra is the air element. Symbolically here, air is information, it's ideas, it's substance that moves through thought and language. But water brings us into the subjective and the interior. And particularly with Scorpio, we have deep water. We have the water that is underneath the surface. And if you have ever spent some time gazing across the surface of water, it's a really interesting practice to let your eyes kind of play in the space between how light is reflecting on the surface of water and what you can see that you can't see underneath the surface of water. And what I mean by that is you can see that you can't see something. You can see that there is a depth. You can see that there is a substance, but you might not be able to actually penetrate into that substance with all of your consciousness. Because in front of that substance is reflexivity. There is a mirroring on the surface of the light. And this is very much a symbol of the relationship between Libra and Scorpio. So with Libra, we have the surface, and we also have the light. And here I'm calling upon the way that light and dark have been positioned as binaries within the delusion of Christian heteropatriarchy, where light has been positioned as positive and dark has been positioned as negative. And light then becomes something that we want to show the world. Look at my brightness, look at my lightness, look at how good I am, look at how great I am, right? And again, we become shells of our egos. We become presentations or performances of who we might be based on reflections of others that are usually telling us how we can get what we want or get what we need, how we can get love, affection, resource, etc., attention. How do we get what we think that we want and we need? We give them a show, right? And in modernity and in current culture, there's a lot of emphasis on being good, being pretty, being pleasing. Again, we have Libra's ruler Venus coming forward. Venus is associated with sweetness and with sugar, right? What's attractive? As you well know, what's on your surface and what's being shown to others, in many cases for the necessities of survival, is not actually reflective of the depth and entirety of your being. And it's certainly not something that is going to display what we might consider to be our shadows. Now, again, this language is predicated upon a binary that I personally don't agree with. Light and dark are two ends of a spectrum and continuum, and they are both full of positive and negative, or attraction, aversion, potential for destruction, creation, etc. But the term shadow, as it comes from like the depth psychologists and places like that, refers to the parts of our beings, our body, minds, our psyches, that are unprocessed and that we might suppress or repress because we have not located skillful means to bring those parts forward, or we have not located avenues of expression where those parts might be safe to come forward for us or for others. Now, all of us contain monsters. You know your own monstrosity probably better than anybody else. And I say that, and at the same time, I'm thinking, if you've let yourself. because a lot of us won't even let ourselves perceive our own monstrosity. That would be really disruptive. It would crack the facade or ideas that we have about who we are. Oh, I'm a good person. I certainly am not capable of bad things. I'm a good person. I'm not a racist. I'm not a rapist. I'm not a thief. I'm not a liar. I'm a good person. Meanwhile, every single person has the seeds of harm sprouting inside of them all the time because we live in a world that's full of harm. We have all been traumatized. We have all been inheritors. We have all been given inheritances of legacies that have unprocessed shadow inside of them. And we live in a world that reflects that to us constantly. And it takes great courage, it takes great bravery to look inwards at the parts of ourselves that are capable of great harm, to look inwards at the parts of ourselves that are petty and jealous and violent and maybe more feral or untamed in some kind of way. And again, this brings me back to the quote by Clarissa Pinkola Estes, right? It is easy to love pleasure, right? To love what's nice and to love what's good, that's easy. But to love truly takes a heroic effort. It takes the capacity to manage your own fear. To love truly and to be loved truly, there is a requirement for vulnerability. There's a requirement for intimacy with what is. To love truly and to be loved truly means that you can be loved in your parts. It means that you can love your monstrosity. And to love our monstrosity does not mean to just let it go helter-skelter, to let it come out with all kinds of force. To love our monstrosity means to be able to be quite tender with it, to recognize the impulses that are there, and to hold the context that we can give those parts of why they're there, and hold in that context curiosity for what they need and what they want. And as we hold those needs and wants, to hold them in balance. And wisdom and discernment, these are big key words for Libra, particularly with its exaltation of Saturn, wisdom and discernment. What else do we also want, right? Our inner monsters might want to enact vengeance on those others that we despise so much. But if we hold that impulse in context, we might be able to imagine or perceive the ongoing residue of harm that we would create if we were, in fact, to enact that violent vengeance upon those others who are so despicable. Would that actually calm our hearts? Would that actually create an ongoing sense of safety, stability, security, and peace for us or for the ones that we love, if we were to enact this monstrosity? Holding a broad breadth for wisdom and discernment, we might be able to think beyond the present moment, as we also position ourselves very deeply inside the present moment so that we can feel what's coming up. Oh, my monster is here. I'm fucking pissed. If I squash the rage that's inside of me and pretend like I'm a really nice person and I'm not mad at all, guess what's about to happen? That rage will find ways to come out and express itself that are probably a lot nastier and a lot more disruptive to well-being than if I had been courageous to turn towards that rage, accept that it's there, hold some space around it, and allow it to express in a way that did not enact monstrosity upon myself or others. Now, how might I express rage in a way that does not enact monstrosity upon myself or others? Well, Scorpio can tell us a thing about this, right? So Scorpio is a sign where we go deep, where we engage therapeutic, psychological processes. We don't need to do this only through Western psychology. We can do this with ourselves. We can go deep. We can engage creatively with these substances and parts of our psyche. We can give ourselves opportunity to enact dramatically in playful ways or not so playful ways, but yet contained ways, right? To kind of give ourselves opportunities to embody our monsters. Sometimes that's really what we need to do. Might need to feel the force of something coming through us in order to know what that force is capable of. We might need some reflection. We might want to process with some trusted others. There may be helpful allies that we find in the occult. Scorpio is a sign that invites us into mysticism and into the arts of working with the unseen. We might seek to get to know our monsters and shadows by integrating them, by not turning away from them. And in doing that, we don't erase them. We don't make them now non-existent. Oftentimes, then what happens is a need for action. Once we've taken the time to process, to integrate, to discern, then we get to the core, to the nugget of wisdom that is there that says, I need something different. So working with our shadows is not in order to maintain some uncracked facade where everything is nice and it's all good and we're not going to disrupt the balance of anything. Working with our shadow is actually engaging ourselves with an evolutionary process of transformation, helping us metabolize and excrete or eliminate, Scorpio rules the bowels, in order to regenerate. Scorpio also rules the organs of reproduction. So on this first day of Libra season, Venus is leaving Libra and entering Scorpio, and as it's doing this, it is squaring Pluto, the modern cohabitant of Scorpio. It is squaring Pluto at the critical degree, the anaretic degree of Capricorn. Now, Pluto in Capricorn is a cycle that began in 2008. I've done so many podcasts now, I can't even count them on this particular energy. The one that I always refer to was in January of 2020. And that one was before the COVID pandemic really started. It was before a lot of the like proverbial shit hit the fan in 2020. But it was all there in the reading. So you can find that if you search Breakdown to Breakthrough, Embodied Astrology 2020. Because I've already talked a lot about Pluto and Capricorn, I'm not going to spend so much time there right now. I will say that the critical degree or the last degree is considered to be a place of a lot of intensity where affliction can happen. And the affliction here has a quality to it that's actually really similar in some ways to what the nodal axis or the eclipse points represent, which is the need to move forward, but the patterns that can also pull us backward. And so at the last degree of something, we are basically ready to move on, but we might also be totally gripped by uncertainty and doubt. We might be pulled back by attachment or nostalgia. We might not know how to make a transition, and so our actions and activities can be awkward and impulsive, and sometimes feel a little pathological at this point. Now, because Pluto has such a long orbit around the sun, and the time that it spends in any sign stretches into decades, so it's been in Capricorn since 2008, it will be in Aquarius for 20 years until the 2040s. We read Pluto then as a transpersonal planet, so a symbol of the collective times and the era that we're in. Pluto in Capricorn cycles bring us historically into cycles of conquest, enslavement, and land theft. They bring us into the cycles of colonization, cycles that include an imposition of belief by dominant powers upon bodies and upon land. And in enacting these cycles of dominance, structures are built. And these structures are structures of governance and authority. These are key words for Capricorn. And inside of these structures are governance. The death force is moving, and it's the death force is alive and well. So Pluto is a symbol of the death force, that which rots and decays and kills. There are all kinds of death on our planet. Again, shout out to Sherry Taylor, who did a great episode on the Bone Mother, or with the Bone Mother. Another wonderful astrologer whose name is escaping me right now, but they talked about death in service to life. So there are kinds of death that are really in service to life. In Libra season at harvest time, the kind of death in service to life might include like cutting down the growth that is ready to be composted in Scorpio season. In our lives, we have to have courage and bravery to end things that are stagnant, that are no longer giving us vitality or joy, so that we can make space for new experiences and new life. Then there's the kinds of death that are devoid of value, and these kind of grotesque, compulsive enactments of mass death that we certainly see in legacies of settler colonialism, imperialism, religious terrorism, etc., where there's a wiping out of populations that, for whatever reason, don't fit in the prescribed homogeneity of what this dominant force considers to be quote unquote good. And in that, we have the dysfunction of Libra and Scorpio, where there's a real intense binary around what is good and what is bad. Who are the good guys? Who are the bad guys? And in the world right now, that particular binary continues to resonate really strongly with this kind of basic light-based binary of lighter equals better and darker equals worse. And we live in a world that has been structured on anti-blackness and pigmentocracy, where those who are less melanated consider themselves to be better than folks that are more melanated. And that these histories, these lineages, have formed all kinds of systems of governance, where then institutions become created. Actual structures are built, physically and materially, as well as ideologically and institutionally and interpersonally and relationally. Structures get built that then enforce this delusional binary insanity to continue to reverberate inside of consciousness and continue to enact this violent othering where, the good side is going to somehow defeat the bad side, even if they have to wipe out every single thing that's alive on Earth. They will prevail, right? That's delusional insanity. So Venus square to Pluto as we enter into Libra season, and then Venus entering into Scorpio, for me feels like we are in a time of unmasking. Now, I don't necessarily mean this about COVID. It's like one of those things where it's like, can we take care of each other out there? You don't have to believe that it's real, but other people, have chronic illnesses, and it's like masking in public spaces could be an act of care. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about unmasking as a metaphor. I'm talking about masks coming off, facades cracking and breaking. And we are living at a time when systems are becoming really exposed. And we can see this in all kinds of ways. We can definitely see it politically. Systems are becoming exposed. And there are false binaries that are being presented here in the so-called United States. There's the false binary, for example, of Democrats and Republicans, the red team or the blue team, who in actuality are both really kind of on the same team. They, on the surface, will say that they're totally different, and they'll represent themselves in opposition to one another. But if we actually look deeper, they are very, very similar in that they, as two parties, are both really being manipulated by corporate interests. They are two parties that are both furthering the war agenda and the militarizing project. They are two parties that are both deeply invested in extraction projects, extraction of land, extraction of human life, human resource and vitality, in order to benefit a very few, the corporate elite and the wealth elite. Masks are coming down. You know, I'm not going to tell anybody like to vote or how to vote, particularly, you know what I'm just saying, like they're not really that different. But it's kind of incredible to watch what's happening, you know, with the Democratic Party right now, and the representation, right, of something different, of a you know, melanated femme person running for office, gaining traction, and then speaking through her mouth policies of ongoing violence, policies of expansion of the incarceration state, extraction of natural resources. We're definitely going to keep fracking, you know, we're definitely going to keep polluting the groundwater and, you know, ruining ecosystems. We're going to have the most terrifying, terrible military in the entire world. We're definitely going to keep the war project going. These masks are coming down. It's not actually what's on the surface. It's what's at the core. We live in a world where there have been generational projects, centuries-long projects, millennia-long projects, building edifices and artifices of what is good. Just think about the edifice of, you know, big buildings like churches or government buildings, right? These big white pillars and statues in front of them. Like, we are good. We're the winners. You know, we're the ones who have our direct line to God. And yet, inside of these systems, we find human failing and hubris. We find absolute corruption, and we find individuals who have been totally deluded into thinking that somehow they are separate from everybody else. If, you know, there's a huge amount of the population that is uneducated, that is unhoused, and that is unfed, and that is unhappy, it doesn't matter. You know, if we have ours, then we'll be safe. And that is absolutely delusional. Oh, if we bomb the shit out of this entire country, and if we terrorize them for generations, we'll be safe. That's actually going to increase our well-being. How that produces any kind of ongoing logic can only happen through constant fortification and reinstallment of separation. It's us versus them. So we're living through this time of unmasking. And in the 2024 Year Ahead collective reading that I did, I talked about enantiodromia as being kind of the theme of 2024. And this word means that something becomes so extreme that it collapses into its opposite. So we have people who are so far left, they're becoming right. We have people who are so far right, they're becoming left. We have people that are so intensely this way that all of a sudden they're that way. People who have so identified as the victim that now they are the oppressor. And what is happening inside of this is an opportunity for us as the people, right, as cells inside of this larger body, to awaken and to start to see a little bit beyond the drama, beyond the distraction, this constant distraction or spectacle of the binary. It's us versus them. It's red team versus blue team. That's the distraction from seeing what's actually happening. It's not red versus blue. It's weaponization and militarization strengthening itself as a dominant force. How do we move against that? How do we become people united in service of life, not people deluded in service of a false identity? How do we get beyond the drama and the distraction of what's being projected when the act fails? And I think that this is a big theme in Libra season with this Venus-Pluto square, because there is a lot of intensity and a lot of kind of orientation around upholding the act, keeping people distracted, keeping people in activated, heightened states of sympathetic consciousness, where their adrenal glands and cortisol production are on blast, so that they are ready to fight and flee. And in that fight, flight energy, they are not paying attention. They are not actually able to pay attention to these larger forces at work and to the ways that they themselves might be being used and manipulated by these larger forces when we could make other choices. Instead of fighting each other, instead of fighting ourselves, we might choose to regulate our energy, to pool our resources, to creatively consider collective solutions. If we take our power back, financially, politically, in terms of our bodily sovereignty, if we take our power back, we actually have plenty. We have more than enough. But this constant distraction is having us continue to give our power away, right? And so again, there's this Aries-Libra binary that puts us into positions of kind of warlike individuals, fighting ourselves, fighting each other, not awakening inside of our relationships to our potentials for freedom, and then continuing to perpetuate these systems of oppression. The act is failing, though, and it's failing for many people, and it's failing in all kinds of ways. And as it fails, there is a need for us to look and sense within. What does this failure then mean for me? What do I have to contend with as it's all failing? So a lot of people are going, oh my God, the world that I wanted for myself back then isn't possible now. The world that I wanted for my children is not going to be what they're going to get. The world that I wanted for myself is not the one that my children can even imagine. And we have to contend with the shit of the moment, with how bad it actually is. And as Venus moves into Scorpio, it starts to move in relationship to what else is happening in water. And right now we have Mars in Cancer, and we have Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. In early October, on October 4th, Mars is actually going to enter what's called its retrograde shadow, or its retro shade. It will pass the degree of 17 Cancer. And in December, on December 6th, Mars will station retrograde at 6 degrees of Leo. And next February, on the 23rd, Mars will station direct again at 17 Cancer. So on October 4th, Mars is passing 17 Cancer. It's beginning to move through the territory where it will retrograde back to. Saturn and Neptune are both currently retrograde. They're going to both be stationing direct by the end of the year. And these movements of the malefics of Mars and Saturn in water, and Neptune, another transpersonal point in water, as Venus comes into Scorpio, for me really resonates as the feeling of needing to go into the depths, needing to enter into the dark. And the question here is, can you go dark? Can we go dark? And I don't mean that in the way that the light dark binary would interpret it. I don't mean go dark as in lose your energy or vitality. I don't mean give in to like your full monstrosity and let it forward. I mean, actually, what we do when we close our eyes and sense inwards, like we did, hopefully, that you did with me, just a little while ago. To go dark is to get out of the projected appearance of things. It's to come into the deep interior and awaken our sensibilities, to come back to our senses, to not only be in this outward daytime kind of vision-oriented place where we are projecting all over everything and can only see what's reflected and only see what's on the surface. How do we come in and actually be with what's here? And what's here at this time for all of us, I think, and take what works and leave the rest, but whether this is resonating for you on a personal level, on an interpersonal level, or on a collective level, I'm going to say that Libra season is bringing a lot of harder to deal with feelings forward. And so we have to go dark. We have to get in touch with grief. We have to allow ourselves to feel pain. We have to get curious about the monsters that are right here underneath the surface and how they are already feeding on the monstrosities that surround us. And as we go dark, what we potentially can do is work alchemically, and this is what water helps us to do, to transform and empower and regenerate so that we can come back to a space of balance in the external relational kind of projected landscape of this thing called life, that we can come back to this place with a greater sense of our own depth and capacity and with courage, because this sentiment that true love requires a heroic effort to face our fears. First and foremost, in order to face our fears, we have to look within. We have to cozy up to the fear that lives inside of us of our own death and irrelevance and suffering. We have to allow intimacy with the inevitable in. We will die. We are suffering. Suffering exists. Pain is here. And we can make choices about how to be in relationship with it. And so what the intelligence of water teaches us is that when we give time and space for process, then we can have more support, more agency in choosing liberation, in deepening our breath. And if you've ever experienced having a really good cry, and then on the other side of that, it's like, oh, okay, there's more space here, right? That's the intelligence of water. That's the wisdom of water. And because I work in the field of embodiment, and so much of what we do is like really allowing ourselves to feel, I'll say, it's like a good cry, or allowing yourself to become a monster in like the safety of your own room for 10 minutes, just allowing yourself to feel and gnash your teeth and stomp your feet and yell curse words and let that all out, or shake your body and then pound on the ground and get really upset about how unfair it all is. It's like those feelings are here and they need to be felt in ways that allow us to access our agency and adulthood. So if we bring up those feelings all the time and we identify with them and we think that this is the only way that we are, then that's what we become. But if we hold skillful containers for ourselves to move through the dance of balance, right, into the dark, back into the light, into the depths, out into the surface, into the interior, then to the relational, then we start to develop this capacity for wisdom, for discernment, for good humor, and for the kind of relationality that can accept ourselves in all of our parts, in our wholes. Okay, so I'm sure there's lots more to say about this particular chart, but I'll pause here, and I'm going to move on to a different visual. Okay, so this is a drawing. I've shared these drawings in previous readings. I really love to practice astrology. Maybe you can tell by now. I love to practice astrology through an embodied, experiential kind of process. And so there's so much meaning inside of all of these symbols. If we're only in our heads about it, if we're only reading and thinking and talking about it and doing math delineations, we're only scratching the surface of what's here. But the symbols are ancient, they are earth-based, they totally resonate with organs and functions and capacities inside of our bodies and inside of the whole of the phenomenal or natural world that our bodies are part of. So as within, so without, as above, so below. The way that I want to work with astrology is really through the felt sense first, and then into the linguistic and the mental. So I draw every single season, and in the drawing, I get a sense of a vibe. This is my interpretation, right? Always make the meaning that's meaningful for you. So I'm going to go through this drawing. So up here in the upper left-hand corner, we're looking at where we're coming from. So September 17th, there's a full moon lunar eclipse in Pisces. We are beginning with that eclipse, a series of eclipses that will take us all the way until early 2027. And that eclipse really resonated very strongly in the kind of axis of Virgo Pisces, with Mercury in Virgo opposing Saturn in Pisces right around the eclipse. And the eclipse itself at 27 degrees of Pisces was conjunct Neptune, it was trine Pluto, and it was sextile with Uranus. So it was contacting all of the outer planets. Eclipse times tend to be weird, I think. Now, I'm an astrologer. I spend most of every day in presence with astrology. The strongest placements in my chart are also the sun and the moon. So I might be a person who is particularly sensitive to eclipses, but I'm going to guess that if you tune in with eclipses, you might also find that these are kind of weird periods of time. And when I say weird, what I mean is it just doesn't feel totally normal during eclipse windows and the lead ups to eclipses. I often experience this somatically, where I have all kinds of body states that just feel like they kind of wash over me. These can be periods of time where there's a lot of timeline blending and issues of the past and the future are kind of converging pretty profoundly. These can also be periods of time where what seem like small instances become larger, longer processes, and what just, doesn't seem like it's going to be a thing really then becomes a thing, and it becomes a big aspect of that quality of time and maybe puts other evolutionary momentums into motion or catalyzes them in some way. So again, eclipses, as they are choreographed by the nodal axis, by the orbiting body of the moon traveling around the earth as we are traveling around the sun, tell us stories about our evolutionary journeys. And symbolically, the north node is the point of becoming, while the south node is the point of releasing. And during times of eclipses, there are patterns and momentum currents of the past making themselves known in the present. And then we have a choice. And the choices that are presented to us at times of eclipses have to do with the ways that we're going to work with karma, basically the residue of what has already been put into motion. Are we going to continue with the pattern as it has been set? Are we going to dig in and make it stronger? Or are we going to do something else? Maybe the pattern itself is done and it is going to let us know that, and we might be kicking and screaming and going, no, I want to stay with the same. But lifing is like, sorry, you gotta move on. So we enter into Libra season just a couple of days after this Pisces full moon lunar eclipse. And as we move into Libra season, as I've already mentioned, Venus is moving into Scorpio. Pisces and Scorpio are water signs. And for the first couple of days of Libra season, we have Mercury in Virgo aspecting all the outer planets that the sun and the moon were just in aspect to. So that full moon or opposition between the sun and the moon was talking to Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And then over the first few days of Libra season, Mercury, our communicator, the antennae of the planetary pantheon, is also contacting these outer planets. So in a lot of your sign-based horoscopes, for almost all the signs, I was like, the first couple days of Libra season feels like there's a lot going on, because Mercury is representative of the parts of our beings that are conscious and coming into consciousness, our cognition, our communication, how we perceive the world around us. In Virgo, Mercury is picking up lots of details. These details might resonate with things to do. Virgo is an earth sign, and it is an earth sign that attends to the details. As Mercury is in contact with Uranus, then Neptune, then Pluto, we might be overwhelmed by the amount of details that we are perceiving. On a basic level, this could just feel like, what the fuck is going on in my life and in the world? I can't even keep track of it all. This could take manifestation in so many different forms. Again, tune in with your horoscopes, because I'll be talking about the house placement, at least for your solar charts. But on a collective level, I'm going to say that the first couple days of Libra season for me feel like they are really pulling focus to the aspects of our times that have to do with environmental breakdown. Now, I haven't read the news yet today, but yesterday when I was looking at the news, I read about at least 2 or 3 major floods, flooding in areas that had, ruined people's homes, washed their cars away, taken their lives, etc. The Amazon is burning, right? Swaths the size of Italy are in flames in the Amazon. These are the lungs of our planet. All across the globe right now, the effects of climate change are intensifying, and we are living through an age of breakdown, a version of apocalypse, right? A world ending as we know it. That is the shifting of what has been up until now a somewhat stable climate. And, humans are pretty young in comparison to the age of the Earth. The Earth has gone through many geologic ages. It will continue to transform. But for humanity's existence, we've had the opportunity to live here with a somewhat stable climate. Many of our ancient ancestors were alive at the last ice age, and it's part of how humans migrated across the continents. But where we are right now is a time of accelerated change and shifting of climate due to human impact, and not just human impact as a whole, but the particular impact of certain streams of humanity and certain streams of consciousness. And so the streams of humanity and the streams of consciousness that are propelling climate change forward most intensely are the streams of consciousness that are objectifying and extractive to the earth and to its inhabitants. So fossil fuels, right, is what's one of the things that's driving climate change the most. And fossil fuels are being extracted. I mean, it's such a wild symbol, right? It's like the breakdown of death of previous eras. These currents of life force running underneath the ground being extracted to fuel agents of death, like cars and planes and, I don't know, like the new Tesla automobiles that are just look like tanks, right? And tanks. So US military is the leading cause of climate change. My sense is that on a collective level, there is a shitstorm, right? That we're in. This is a collective moment of a shitstorm, and I think Mercury in aspect to the outer planets and Venus moving into Scorpio is a representation of that. There is a need to kind of be with the shit as it's storming, and the intensity of it all is not going to go away in Libra season. It's probably not going to go away in 2024. It might be our lifetimes, and it may not. There actually is a chance that humans can rectify our course and that we can move into maybe rebalancing projects. But that's certainly not where things seem to be headed at the moment. Now, as this consciousness is expanding, that we're in a shitstorm, that military and fossil fuels are the driving forces of this shitstorm, there are changing frequencies inside of conversations. So whether this is a UN resolution to make a step towards indigenous sovereignty and return of land for Palestinians, and some kind of judgment of an occupying force being illegal, or whether this is awareness of how many trillions of dollars have actually been pumped into fossil fuel production, even as climate scientists are yelling themselves voiceless about the need to cease reliance on fossil fuels. There is a growing consciousness, and there are conversations that are trying to grapple with really big things. And I think a lot of people are trying to have different kinds of conversations. And I think that the conversations a lot of people are trying to have are ones that span multitudes of experience and seek to understand the complexities of things as they trickle down and ripple through the localities and specifics of things. And so with Mercury and Virgo talking to all the outer planets, I think a lot of folks are really seeking to understand, what does it mean for them where they are? What can they do? You can't do anything on your own about climate change. You can do all the recycling that you want to do. It's not going to really make a dent. On your own, in your own little bubble of existence, what would be the most effective thing that you could do? There are choices you can make around your consumption, but there are other choices that you can make around your attitude and your perception of need. There are other choices that you can make around communication. There are other choices that you can make around solidarity or resistance, or how you might participate with a kind of organizing or mutual aid or something like that. No single choice is going to be the answer. Billions of single choices have to be involved in the answers. And I think that we are in a moment where there is a kind of fractalizing of consciousness, where more and more people are understanding how the small pieces relate to the bigger pieces, and that this is absolutely essential in these times. I want to give a quick plug for an Embodied Astrology series that's coming up starting in November called Constellations of Conflict, where our faculty member Ramon Gabrieloff-Parrish will be leading us through an exploration of astrology that helps us to conceive of conflict through the lenses of the internal, the interpersonal, and the institutional, or the organizational. And we'll be looking at the ways that all of these spaces overlap, where we might internalize what is institutional, and then it comes out in our relationships and in all other kinds of different configurations. And actually using astrology to help us kind of unwind and clarify or explore some of the places that tend to get really sticky, where, you know, we'll find conflict that is much bigger than us, you know, inside of us or inside of our relationships. I think that these are the kinds of conversations and explorations that are going to make the most difference right now, because consciousness has to awaken. And as we move into Libra season, these Mercury aspects, I think consciousness is trying to awaken. On the 26th of September, Mercury moves into Libra. And then you can see that there's this little cluster of events between the 26th of September and October 2nd, when we have the Libra new moon and solar eclipse. The solar eclipse comes after the day that Mercury makes its superior conjunction, or cazimi, to the sun. I said after, but it's actually 2 days after. The sun is in direct contact with the south node on the 29th, and so is Mercury. Then they form their conjunction. Then we have the new moon and solar eclipse. So Mercury-Sun conjunctions, or superior conjunctions, or cazimis, are periods of time when our minds are impressed by some kind of information that is becoming conscious. And we want to take that consciousness and project it forward. There is a capacity for a more far-reaching, long-ranging kind of consciousness. This is a feeling of being able to see where we might be going with something. And because Mercury and the sun are conjunct with the south node, I'm going to say that there's a quality to this time of being able to see where we might go with something if we don't change. So if I stay the same, this is where I'm going to end up. If I don't let go of this thing, this is then what it's going to do to me over time. And the big feeling right now, and I think that this is amplified by Mars trine Saturn right around the time that the sun and Mercury conjoin the south node, and also Pallas and Sagittarius aspecting the nodes through trine and sextile. I think the big feeling right now is that we have to move through or move past or find some way to let go or cut cords with what does not work. And it's a struggle. There is a lot of attachment. There are structural cordings that feel impossible to let go of. The struggle is collective. It can't only be realized on an individual level. So if I want to let go of harming the environment, but I live in a house, I drive a car, I live on stolen land in a country where 30 cents of every single dollar that I spent is sent to the military, that's a real big pickle for me, right? How do I move in ways that are non-harming? It's impossible. So how do I then devote myself to harm reduction? How do I work to untangle myself from these systems of oppression? And what do I need to work with in myself? Where are the cords that I need to cut internally and relationally and spiritually and psychologically, so that I can live in ways that are more of benefit than they are of harm? And this is what's bringing me to relationships. And, you know, Libra as a symbol is always going to ask us to tune in with our relationships. And I'm going to say that Libra season this year especially is pushing us to look at where our relationships need to change. Libra is also speaking to the contracts that we make inside of our relationships, the agreements that hold the container and the surface or the form of our interrelations and connections. Contracts need to get updated. Some of them need to be broken or thrown out entirely. This needs to happen for us internally in the ways that we are keeping contracts with relationships that we have, again, to family of origin, to authority figures, to internalized ideas that our society has or culture has put inside of us about who we need to be for whatever. You know, this could have to do with your gender, with your age, with your nationality or race. It could have to do with your religion. It could have to do with your particular embodiment for some other kind of reason. What stories do you tell yourself about who you need to be in order to have love, have care, be accepted in society, get what you need, be taken seriously, etc.? What stories are you telling yourself that are false, that have you masking and performing, and then therefore suppressing and repressing aspects of your being that don't go away, but that find ways to express themselves, probably not as you would wish, right? And what our suppressed, repressed energies do is they come out in physical symptoms and illnesses and dis-ease. They come out in funky attitudes and weird, manipulative, unhealthy, unwell behaviors in our relationships. They come out as stagnancy and inertia and stuckness and inability to access our passion and sense of purpose in life. They come out in urgency and miscalculation of our own needs and wants, so we end up being reckless and hasty. So what do we need to let go of? I think that this solar eclipse and new moon in Libra is really asking us to tune in and get real about what is not in service. Then a couple of days later, Mars enters its retrograde shadow. This is the day that Venus then trines Saturn. So a lot of movement in water. The sun is squaring Ceres in Capricorn that day. And this sense of what water wants, what water needs to move down and in, to penetrate, to pervade, to soften, to dissolve. What drives us to be so fake and false and urgent and hasty in the world? What drives that momentum is the inability and unwillingness or fear of feeling our feelings. If we actually gave ourselves time to grieve, if we actually were able to feel the impact of the harms that are being live streamed to us 24/7 across a gazillion channels, if we weren't so numbed to them, we would make really different choices. But the onslaught that numbs us and the constant kind of encouragement to do the dysfunctional Libra thing, right? Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, turn that frown upside down. Let's keep going. Let's get at it, up and at 'em. Like, get back on the capitalism rat race and just keep it going. What happens if we don't? It's terrifying. On an individual level, it's terrifying. So on a communal level, then, how can we support ourselves as individuals to pause and to slow down? As individuals, sometimes we break down. Sometimes we can't keep it going, and then it's terrifying. Inside of the rat race, if somebody slows down, they tend to get trampled. As communities, then, how can we practice slowing down? To me, I'm reading these symbols as a need to mourn, as a need to actually feel and give attention to the residue of harm and how thick it is. It's generations thick. There is no savior that can fix this. And this is an important theme for what's happening in Pisces right now with Saturn and Neptune both in Pisces. There are no saviors that are going to get us out of this. There is no one person, there is no one government, there is no one religion, there is no one God that is going to deliver us from the mess that we have found ourselves in. Saviors are how we got here. The idea of a one God, the idea of a one guy, the idea of a one way that's the right way is how we got here. The eradication of diversity, the flattening of potentiality is how we got here. It's how we're staying stuck here. It's not up to something outside of us to save us. It's up to us to save us. So on a communal level, how do we contend with that? How do we gather together to feel what is here? to feel the feelings that are here. Now I'm going to jump ahead a little bit and then come back to this cluster in the middle, but I'm going to jump ahead right now and say that towards the ends of Libra season, on the 17th of October, we have this full moon in Aries, and then we have Venus moving into Sagittarius, another fire sign, that same day. Also making an aspect to Pluto on the way out of Scorpio. This time it's a sextile. And then as Venus continues through Sagittarius, it will trine and sextile the nodal axis again. So my feeling, again, and I've already said this, is that when we make space to feel, then we can find energy. If we don't make space to feel, the repressed feelings, what is not being felt, ends up becoming stifling, imprisoning, and stagnating. It clogs our systems. It deludes and confuses us mentally, emotionally, and psychically. And so holding communal space for feeling, whether this is just sitting with a friend, being able to just get real about it, whether this is having an important conversation with your partner, right? Again, contracts need to change. There are important relationship negotiations that need to happen. This might be having conversations with your kids or your family or something. Being real about what's here. On collective level, it might be gathering communally to just be with the problems, to be with the trouble, to not try and fix the things. We don't actually know what to do. These problems are so big, but we will be able to access our discernment and wisdom if we can feel. We don't know how to fix things if we can't even fucking feel them. Right? If we're trying to fix things and we can't feel them, then we are coming from a totally disassociated, disembodied place. And to go back to this savior thing for a moment and how we got here in the first place, a lot of the harmful momentum, I'm going to say the majority, if not all of the harmful momentum, is coming from people who thought something was wrong that was totally fine, but in their delusion of something being wrong and the idea that they could fix it, they didn't feel it, they just went in and did a thing. Christian missionaries going into places where they don't know anything about who's there or what's there, with their ideas about what's right, wiping people out through violence, right? Through fear, through coercion, through manipulation. So they're going to fix something, and they end up creating enormous suffering, enormous harm, the residue and the ripples of which are still resounding, still amplifying. Can we be with the trouble of it? The wisdom of our sensing bodies and our emotional bodies, especially when we come together collectively to mourn and to grieve and to be with what is what will allow us to find our way into what is needed, into the remediation, into the healing. If we don't allow ourselves to feel, we're going to keep on going in the same patterns. They're going to keep getting worse. Now we see that towards the end of the month, Venus goes into Sagittarius and we get this Aries full moon. And to me, I'm going to read this in two ways. So with what I've just been saying, there's kind of like two options. So one option, you don't feel the feelings. You allow yourself to continue to ricochet in reactivity because that's what not feeling your feelings will do. It will actually make the unfelt feelings stronger and more impacting unconsciously. Then we get into more of the same in terms of living at a time where there's amplifying extremism and fundamentalism. Full moon in Aries, square to Mars and Pluto, Venus going into Sagittarius, we've got extremists everywhere and growing, right? There's extreme movements of fundamentalism. People really fired up about their ideas about what's right and wrong. And we know what happens there. We have the arguments just getting bigger. We have the reactivities ricocheting. On the other side of that, giving space and time to feel the feelings, to go dark, to be with what is here, to allow the intelligence of water to pervade, to move down and in, to connect us communally to the larger movements that are here. to feel into the ways that our lives are continuous with the past and with the future, to give ourselves to water, right? To the life-giving nourishment of surrender of our egos, right? To give ourselves to water. That can also then fill us with a sense of purpose and playfulness and spontaneity and energized vitality. So between the new moon and the full moon, through the first couple of weeks of October, if you feel your feelings and give space and time to be with the complexity of things, it will open up your energy. You will have a breakthrough. Somewhere in between the 2nd and the 17th, you're going to need to dive deep. You're going to want to get into it. You're going to need to get into it. If you avoid it and fight it and get reactive about it, it will probably accelerate into a combustive kind of state. But if you work skillfully with it and invite yourself to go down and in, you will be energized by it. Now, we're moving into Scorpio season, and Venus is in Sagittarius, and it's the Aries full moon. And so there might be some combustion. There might need to be the force of fire that comes through for some folks. But if you have processed the water, that force as it comes through is going to be way more discerning than it will be reactive. And what's happening out on the larger political stage or whatever, I don't know what any of us can necessarily do about that, but the more that we increase our inherent intelligence and collective intelligence, the more we'll see that mirrored in what gets projected upon people with egos big enough to seek like big places of political power. The culture can shift, actually. Okay, so now to come back into this middle section of Libra season, you can see some big bubbles down at the bottom of the map. So here we have Jupiter stationing retrograde. Jupiter is currently transiting through Gemini. Jupiter is stationing retrograde with a trine to Mercury in Libra. Mercury will be opposing Chiron in Aries the same day. Jupiter is also stationing retrograde as we have the quarter moon, first quarter moon in Capricorn, and just a couple of days before Pluto stations direct at the critical degree of Capricorn and will begin to make its progress back into Aquarius. So some important movement in the air element between about the 8th and the let's say the 13th of September. And you can see on the 13th, we have, because the Sun and Mercury are traveling very close together right now, here we have the Sun opposing Chiron and trine Jupiter. And then that same day, Mercury will make its square to Pluto. This is mirroring what Venus did on the first day of Libra season. Then it will enter Scorpio, and Mars will square Chiron that same day. So we have a lot of potentially sensitive, kind of combustive energy at this time that can be in great service to breakthrough. So mental intensity would be expected throughout Libra season. I'm going to say relational intensity, intensity around agreements. Is this what I want, or is this what I don't want? On a collective level, intensity around agreements, right? What are they doing out there? You know, what are they doing with my tax dollars? What is the school district doing with my kids' education? What are the medical institutions doing with my partner's health? It's like these kinds of feelings of frustration or intensity inside of structures and inside of systems can also then become reflexive or reflected in our internal experiences. And what is necessary, I think, at this point is the liberatory work of the Libra-Aries axis. So recognizing where we have agency and where we have choice. So much of what we have to contend with is not what we're going to choose. You didn't choose to come into your body, into your lifetime, into the place or the era you were born. You didn't choose for whoever to be elected to whatever office. You didn't, it's like you didn't choose to come in at, time of apocalypse and climate chaos. So much is beyond what we can affect personally. It is not what we choose, but how we relate with it is our choice, and how we relate with it will then have an impact on our immediate environment. And then our immediate environment will reflect back to us our vibe and our energy, and then we continue the dance, right? The balance, imbalance. So this is a period of time in which there's a lot of potential for awakening to choice. Jupiter is stationing retrograde in Gemini, a sign of choice. Pluto is stationing direct at the last degree of Capricorn, about to move into Aquarius for the next 20 years. Your choices matter. And what you choose every single day has a residual and cumulative impact. And what you choose to repeat and what you choose to put into practice matters. It matters for your own life, it matters for your relationships, and it matters for the world, even if it can't single-handedly change the world. It matters inside of the environment, the shared collective space that we're all a part of. Libra season is a gate, right? The cardinal signs are all gates. They are shifting of basic, primary, fundamental energies. At Libra season, we have a shifting between light and dark. This is a gate, potential portal, where we can recognize our own agency and capacity for choice. And as we recognize our capacity for choice, we recognize our capacity for change. Every choice that you make serves change, and change is constant. You are aging, you are dying, seasons are shifting, everybody around you is aging, everybody around you is on the process, some kind of pathway towards death. How are you going to meet the moment? Clutched in fear for what is no longer even here because this moment is already gone, nevertheless, 5 years ago moment? Are you going to grasp towards what you think you can control? Or are you going to wake up right here, right now, and be present with what you can choose? And what you can choose is to be courageous. You can choose right now to love and to be loved. You can choose to be aware of how you're bringing your energy into this particular moment. You can choose to tune in with, are you really scared right now? And what is that doing to your body? And how is that impacting your choices? And what would happen if you just held yourself for a moment and said it's okay to be scared, instead of trying to push it away and pretend like you're tough and you got it together? So as we move towards the end of the season, we're moving towards Venus, moving into Sagittarius. Venus is really important in Libra season as the planetary guide of Libra. There's big contact to the nodal axis all season. The nodal axis is currently resonating in Aries and Libra. Throughout the season, we have significant contacts with Saturn. Saturn is currently in Pisces. Saturn is exalted in Libra. The exaltation of Saturn here really calls us into discernment, to discipline, to integrity, to the awareness that it's the connective tissues, right, that hold our structures together. It's the relationships between different parts of ourselves, that tensegrity that actually creates our integrity. But in 2025, Saturn and Neptune are both going to leave Pisces and conjoin together at the very first degree of Aries. At this point, Pluto will be in Aquarius, and Uranus will actually be leaving Taurus and moving into Gemini. And what I'm getting is that as we move through this full moon in Aries, we are getting a little bit of a glimpse of the future. And the note that I wrote down here is we have to do the impossible. We have to do the impossible. We have to become enlivened and committed to our awakening in these times. And that feels impossible because it's so deadening, it's so numbing, it's so mind-numbingly frustrating and impossible feeling, right? To be liberated sometimes, to be awakened here. But that's actually what we have to do. We have to believe in our capacity for change in spirit over time as a collective project. We have to believe that this particular moment right now is actually not what's forever, and that we are in a process and a project of evolution. And we have to take the momentum for breakthroughs from the experiences of breakdowns and breakups. There's a need to liberate right now and to experience the liberation of our own choice making. So this is a good time for conversations, communication, and thoughts that are disruptive to the status quo, and that push us out of states of stagnant balance, which I'll say is a kind of imbalance of not moving. So even if we are feeling our own kind of extremism, oh my God, I just can't anymore, right? Or like an intense kind of feeling of needing to move in some kind of direction, we can meet it with consciousness and with awareness. And hopefully we can make skillful choices around how we move in the direction of evolution in ways that are connective and relational. And here we really want to take exquisite responsibility for our own actions and choices, knowing that they will affect others, but also knowing that the effect that we have on others doesn't dictate their entire lives. They also are sovereign beings. They are beings who get to make their own choices. So if we can make choices from places of attunement and care and consideration of our light and our dark, of our internal, external, of our, more subconscious, maybe monstrous, swampy selves needing to not be held in perpetuity in chains, but evolved and brought forward into some kind of collaboration with the parts of ourselves that are caring and kind and gentle and considerate and all that, then what we have is dynamism. We have creativity. And we want to work through our resistance to change by building our attractions to purpose and passion, and really reminding ourselves what we want to put our faith in. So I'll end there and offer a little bit of a final embodied meditation. And in this embodied meditation, again, if it feels okay for you, if it feels comfortable and safe, you might close your eyes. You might just experience that shutting down of what comes filtered in through the realms of light, and the transition into the interior, into the subjective. And as you close or open your eyes, and you could do that a couple of times, you might just notice how it feels in your nervous system. What happens in your attention and your energy as you transition from a visual external to the sensory internal. And notice your breath and the balance of your breath, the inhale and the exhale. And as you feel your breath, remind yourself that you are alive right now and that your life is temporary. Your experience of life has emerged from the great everything, and one day it will dissolve and return. And as you feel your breath and you notice what it feels like just to be a being with an internal awareness, you might remind yourself of love or gratitude. You might feel into any intention that you have towards happiness, your own or others. And in any way that's meaningful for you right now, remind yourself that you have choice. You have a choice to open or close your eyes. You have a choice to sense your breathing. You have a choice to remember what you love, where your gratitude is. You have a choice to feel your feelings. You have a choice to remember that time is passing swiftly. And you have a choice to be here right now, to wake up right now, and to do the impossible thing, which is to be present in the midst of everything that would take you away from this presence. You have a choice. If it serves you and your choice to open your eyes and to stretch out and to appreciate your space and the light, we're 2 hours in and it's time to close. Before we close, I want to say thank you. Thanks for being here. If you are still here, thanks for your attention and listening. If you enjoy this work, I hope you'll consider joining me next month. I'm going to be on retreat in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, the indigenous lands of the Arapaho, Cheyenne, Ute, Paiute, many tribes and brands that have moved through that gorgeous, amazing, magical land. I'll be there with Ramon and Michelle Gabrielaf Parrish. Ramon is my colleague at Embodied Astrology. Michelle is a dear friend and big inspiration for me. Ramon and Michelle have been longtime activists in the food and environmental justice movement. They are strategists and world builders and futurists, ancient futurists, indigenous futurists, Afrofuturists. Ramon is an astrologer. Both of them are mystics. And we are going to be co-facilitating a 4-day on-land retreat at the Eco Dharma Center. So this is a residential retreat. We will be spending time outside and in the mountains with our bodies, with our breath, and tuning in with astrology as a living practice and as a way that we might resonate with systems thinking and design thinking and futuring and world building and strategizing and communal tending through this symbolic language and in ways that invite all of our parts to be present and in ways that are really seeking to dwell in the interconnections and continuity between ourselves, our relationships and others, and then this phenomenal dream of the world that we are here emerging inside of. So if you're interested, you can find more information in the show notes or at embodiedastrology.com. I also want to say that over the course of Libra season, with Venus as our Time Lord, anything that we can do to uplift Venusian intelligence is going to be in service to us. And Venus, of course, is often associated with art and with beauty. And one of the ways that we love most to explore astrology at Embodied Astrology is through art. All of us, all of the facilitation team of 5 people everybody's an artist in their own ways. And over the course of Libra season, we have 2 upcoming events, both on the weekend of October 12th and 13th. So on the 12th, we have the Nebula Lab, which is a space that is being stewarded by Gabs 404, who is a documentarian and a visual artist and photographer. They have been leading this Nebula Lab, which is a kind of dream lab, think space, emergent, exploratory space for astrology, particularly tuning in with Neptune and with the vibrations of Neptune. This session on October 12th, they will be dealing with time. And their guest, Christopher Burrick, is a researcher of time. And Gabs and Christopher are going to invite us to explore the plasticity of time, the cyclical nature of time, and the imaginal nature of time. This is really important also in the symbolic representation of all that Libra can be. And again, it's exaltation with Saturn, because here in these phenomenal lives, we have time, and the time is now. And so tuning in with the presence of time can really be a key, if not the key, to awakening to our potentials for liberation and courage and profundity of love and connection. The next day, on Sunday, October 13th, Janata Petrus will be leading her monthly artistic alchemy space every single month near the full moon. Janata guides us in practices and prompts to help us explore and integrate around our life artistry. So it's a wonderful space for people who are bringing art projects or creative projects of any kind to work on. It's also a great space just to help inspire and support creativity in general. I get so much from Janata's facilitation. She's just such a deeply loving and expansive being, and the space that she holds is really quite exquisite. She has a Libra moon and really knows a thing about how to take care of people and help people take care of themselves by being able to access our inherent connections to love and beauty and creativity. So this will be upcoming near the Aries full moon. She's going to be working with the Libra-Aries axis, and I think a lot of these themes that have come up, particularly in terms of liberation inside of awakened relationship, are going to be important for her workshop. Throughout the year at Embodied Astrology, we have a lot going on. Sherry Taylor, who I've mentioned a couple of times, is leading an ongoing devotional cycle series with Saturn in Pisces. She has a new cycle coming up in November, and I will actually be her guest for the initiation of that cycle. I mentioned Ramon's Constellations of Conflict series also, that is coming up beginning in November as well. And once again, every Monday you can find me on Zoom in Somatic Space. All of our offerings at Embodied Astrology are provided by tiered pricing. We do have scholarships available. No one is turned away for lack of funds. And if you are compelled by this work, I hope that you will join us. You can find all the information that you need in the show notes or at embodiedastrology.com. The last thing I'll say is that if you enjoyed this transmission and if you find benefit in this work, please do help support it. The best way to do that is to click the buttons for like and follow and subscribe. It does help boost us in the algorithm every time you make a comment or click the heart and add us to your subscription feeds. Please also share us with your friends and networks. You can sign up for our newsletters. You can follow us on Instagram at Embodied Astrology, and you can join our member community on Circle. We have a free member tier where you can get your horoscopes every month along with our newsletter and blog. You can also get access to a video library of short embodied practices and discounts sometimes to our other offerings. And then you can become a paid member as well and get access to Somatic Space and Tea Time and more. All right, I'll leave it there. I'm wishing you all the best in Libra season and beyond.